Hello and welcome to another episode of Unworthy History. Today we got some more actual history for you from this book right here, 70 Years in Texas, Memories of the Pioneer Days, Indian Depredations, and the Northwest Cattle Trail by J.M. Franks. He was a citizen of Gatesville, Texas, and this was published back in 1924. Now, the story we're going to read about today takes place in McCulloch County, Texas, back in 1874, so it's sort of one of the last Indian battles in Texas. This is called an Indian fight near Mercury. This fight took place by Captain J.K. Blount and several men, of which I have only a few of their names: Jack Kingsbury, Pete Edmondson, and Simon Lindley. In the spring of 1863, the Blount family left Erath County and came to what is known as the Beasley Crossing on the Colorado River and settled on the south bank of the stream in McCulloch County. From that year until 1874, Indian raids were as common as the new full moon. These people, like the other settlers, had many horses and cattle stolen by the Indians. In 1869, about 75 Indians came down and crossed the Colorado River, about 2 miles above the Blount place. They robbed and burned a house that belonged to Mrs. Lindley, who was not at home at the time, and then passed on down about 3 miles to a store of Mr. Calvert, which they plundered and set on fire. They then followed the main road leading towards the San Saba town for quite a distance, scattering calico and other goods along the road. In 1874, Mr. Blount decided to build a corn crib, and he sent his son, J.K. Blount, to cut logs. The timber was about 1/2 mile from the house. He got his horse and rode within 100 yards of the place, then left his horse tied and went about 100 yards into the woods and began cutting logs. This was July 21st, 1874. About 11 o'clock, Mr. Kingsbury, one of their neighbors, came along and suggested that if Mr. Blount's son would help him grind his axe, he would help him chop the logs. This was agreed to. When they got to the place where the horse was tied, it was gone. There were plenty of Indian signs. They hastened home and prepared to take the trail, which led northeast about 4 miles, and turned southeast and crossed the Colorado River. Mr. Blount was riding in front. After crossing the river, they followed the trail about 2 miles and scented the Indians. They smelled just like a wolf. As they were just getting out of the brush, they ran right onto the Indians, not over 30 yards ahead. One of them was riding Blount's horse that he had tied near where he was chopping logs. There was one white man in the bunch of Indians. They said he looked to be about 30 or 35 years old, had a light mustache, light hair, and wore a broad-brimmed white hat. They said that they knew he was a white man, but the one that was riding just behind him was riding Blount's horse and looked to be an Indian. They dashed forward at full speed, and the Indian that was riding Blount's horse was shot, and another Indian had 2 silver-plated pistols shot from his hands before he fell from his horse. This Indian was shot 5 times. The white men had only cap and ball pistols, and these were soon empty and they had to return. They went back and got another saddle and horse, but the dead Indians were carried away by their comrades. Some years after that, 2 Indians were found buried in a cave on Antelope Creek, about 2 miles from where the fight took place. The fight took place about 7 miles northeast from where the town of Mullen is now located. So that's the end of this story. This was another one brought to us by Mr. J.M. Franks, who is a citizen of Gatesville, Texas, and published this book about 100 years ago. So if you want to see more episodes like this, then be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Unworthy History.